everybody, and welcome. Thank you for joining today's webinar with Base and Precious Metals Explorer Alvo Minerals. I'm Annabel Munro, Account Director here at Investability, and I'm delighted to be joined by Rob Smakman, the Managing Director of Alvo. It's full speed ahead for Alvo as the company recently released further outstanding results from their high-grade copper VMS C3 prospect. Now, to give an overview of how this webinar will progress, Rob will briefly talk through the highlights of the recent announcement, as well as outlining what we can expect from the company as they progress phase one of their three-phased exploration strategy: discover, expand, upgrade. We'll then open up to a Q&A. So without further ado, I'll hand over to you, Rob, to talk us through the highlights.
Thanks, Annabel, and really great to be back again. I love this format where we get a chance to engage directly with shareholders and interested parties, and I really hope that we can shed a bit of light on the results we put out about a week ago. I was really impressed with the numbers, and I hope everyone can get on board and have a look. So I am sharing my screen now. Can you see that? Okay.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Although it hasn't gone full screen. How's that?
Great.
Yep, excellent. All right, so yeah, these are the second set of results that we put together from C3. It's holes 8 through 12, and happy to say that they're the best results that we've received to date. So the thickest and some of the highest grade numbers that we've seen. Hole 12 was the highlight, 36 metres, which is a really thick result, 1.5% copper and just over 8%, 8.5% zinc. With a really nice highlight of 14 metres at over 14% zinc and 1.7% copper. Hole 8 was also really important and nearly 20 metres thick. And I'm going to focus on those two holes a little bit later because the key to those particular holes was that they are at the limits of the resource, the current resource, and indicate that we're really open at depth. And the other holes that we had, hole 10 had a nice thick intercept of supergene mineralisation near surface, which was a bit of a surprise as well because that's something that we discovered in the first round of drilling, and it's now followed up with hole 10 and another hole 2 as well. And yeah, the rigs have finished at C3 for that first phase of drilling and have moved to C1, our second prospect. Yeah, the holes that are outstanding still from C3, which is holes 13 through 18, are more on the extremities of the result, the resource so far, so to the north and to the south, shallower, and trying to look at the extensions along strike. So we'll talk a little bit about those as well. So the diagram on the left is really a location map. We're in the middle part of Brazil, central Brazil. I'm talking to you today from Palmeirópolis, which is the small town nearby the project. A town of about 10,000 people. It's a nice little place to operate. It's nice and hot at the moment. The rainy season's finished, and yeah, it was good 35 degrees today, so we're working on our suntans. And the two prospects that we'll talk about today are C3, which is about 15 kilometres to the northeast, and C1, which is about 12 kilometres basically due east of town. And C1 is where we're currently drilling at the moment. C3 is where we're reporting on the results. And the right-hand side is the drill plan. So what I'm showing here is the layout of the drill holes and what their results are. The results on the left are from the historical work that was done by the CPRM, or the Geological Mines Department. They're actually up here on site at the moment visiting the project and looking through it, and they're all pretty impressed so far. So after this webinar, I'm going to join them for dinner. And then on the right-hand side are the holes that we're reporting today, as well as some of our other results. And the two highlight holes, hole 12 and hole 8, are, if you can see my mouse, are these two holes here. So right in the central part of the deposit, and at the extremities, or the deepest part of the hit. The yellow holes are the ones that we haven't reported yet. So we're receiving those results this week and next week, and hopefully we'll be able to report on all the drilling so far at C3 in probably a couple of weeks from now. So that's all coming together, and you'll note that 17, 18, as well as 15 and 16 are at the northern and the southern extremities of what we've drilled so far. So they'll provide really important information for us along strike, and we're actually hoping that they'll come back with some good numbers as well. Certainly from the visuals that we've drilled to date have been pretty good. So, yep, just moving on. Now I've put this slide together just to highlight a couple of important things. The slide on the left was from the very first round of drilling that we put out. I think that was in early February. And you'll notice that we drilled on this hole here, which is actually hole 8, the deepest hole in this particular section, and we reported 18 metres of visual sulfides in the drilling and in that particular location. And also we didn't report anything in hole 10 because we had no VMS hit in that particular hole. In the most recent report, which is a diagram, similar diagram on the right hand side, you'll note that hole 8 here at depth is exactly 18 metres at 1.78% copper, just over 10% zinc, and silver and gold and lead. And all I'm trying to show here is that the mineralisation is so visual that we feel really confident in reporting our widths. So if you look at the last announcement, we've reported all the visual hits from holes 13 through to 18, and can give shareholders a real idea of what the potential is, both along strike and down dip. So there's a bit of a hint for you. And then on surface, the hole 10, which reported a thick intersection of the supergene mineralisation, excuse me, that was also quite a good intercept for us, albeit with higher zinc than copper, which was a little bit different from the first round. So I think that's going to be an interesting work going forward, is trying to understand how the zinc and the copper handle in the supergene zone. And then the final slide that I wanted to put together for you all today was really just highlighting how it all looks in the long section, and then comparing that deepest hit, which was the 36 metres in hole 12. And this interpretation that's come here from hole 12, where there's a fault and a little bit of folding in the upper zones up here, has gone a long way to try and explain how those intercepts hang together. The fault comes from the downhole information that we've seen in hole number 1. Oops, skipped forward. Hole number 1 and hole number 12. And we've seen some folding here in hole 123, one of the historical holes. So we think this is a reasonable interpretation. And I think one of the key points that we draw from this particular cross-section, if you can see the hashed zones here on the left-hand side, that's the historical interpretation of the mineralised zone. Obviously, it's cutting off here at the base, and it's quite a regular shape. Hole 12 really opens up this whole section at depth. And if you look over here on this particular side over here, that's hole 12 here, completely open at depth. That blue point here is the original orientation of the famous hole 126. Which we now think is much steeper than what the original data was showing. And so, yeah, we're really excited about the potential down dip in the central part of this zone. We're actually working on a different interpretation on this map, showing a grade times thickness layer rather than just the block model, because we think it's a much more updated version. So that'll come out in the next round of drilling, when we have an updated map for this particular one. So that's really all I really wanted to point out from this particular slide. And I think the last thing that I was going to say was that the holes, the yellow holes here, are the ones that that are in the lab still, and so those results are pending at the moment, and we'll have those out as soon as we can. So, yeah, without further ado, I might throw it back to Annabel and see if there's any questions that have popped up in the screen.
Yeah, thanks for the update, Rob. There's clearly plenty happening at Palmer. So that does bring us to the Q&A section of the webinar. If you wish to submit a question, you can do so through the live Q&A box. There were also some questions submitted prior to the webinar, so I'll start with those ones. Benny's written in and asked, these are strong results. What do they mean for the project and further exploration potential?
I think what it means for the project going forward is that these two holes here have shown that it's completely open at depth. This particular hole here, which if I'm not mistaken is hole 14, had a really nice hit in the visual side of things. So I think that's open at depth underneath this one as well. This hole here had a good hit in the visuals as well. That's still open at depth. And both of these holes along strike to the north and to the south all showed reasonable results from the visuals as well. So we're still open along strike and we're still open at depth. And I think these results, I think are the most key results we've released to date, because they are extension holes. And I think the first round of results were principally upgrade or infill holes to try and increase the confidence in the resource. And these two holes, which have been our most outstanding so far, are really focused on the extension side. So I hope that answers the question.
David's asked, when can we expect the completion of drilling? And once it's complete, what's the plan forward for Alvo?
We started a 10,000 metre program in October, straight after we listed. We're about halfway through that now. We drilled about 4,700 metres at C3, and we've obviously moved to C1 a couple of weeks ago now, and that's going really well. Once we've finished with this round of drilling at C1, which is probably about 4,000 metres, we'll swing the rigs back to C3 and complete some deeper holes. But before we do that, we'll be using the EM equipment to do flem and downhole surveys on C3. So at this stage, the 10,000 metres, I've already spent, I've already planned my entire budget, and based upon the results so far, there's no doubt that we'll be extending our drilling beyond the 10,000 metres, and that'll be announced and discussed with the market and with the board in due time. But certainly it means that we'll be drilling for a while ahead, I think, if that makes sense. So we'll continue drilling at C1, and then once we've done some drilling there and we're ready to go back to C3, we'll return, do some more work at C1 in terms of EM as well, and then perhaps swing back again to C1. So I don't see an end to drilling at this stage. We're finding too much stuff.
Rosie's written in and asked, what's an example of a VMS complex similar to what Palmer is, and how big can they get?
Hi, Rosie. Rosie's my sister out of Queensland. Yeah, good question. Like, VMS camps or districts can be really, really large, and we're doing a bit of work on trying to understand how they sit in the how it sits in the global scene, and essentially the closest analogy that we've found so far is the Noranda camp in Canada, and that's just over 100 million tonnes in a number of deposits within the camp. So certainly it has potential, and there's a number of these styles of VMS around the world. We're part of what they call a bimodal mafic, and the camps are generally multiple deposits in the same region. And because of the history of Palmaropolis or the Palmer project, we know that there is potential to have multiple deposits within a small area. So we're excited by that potential. We're putting together a bit of a story around how the exploration potential could really look, but I think Noranda is the closest analogy so far, and that's a pretty good example because it's just on 100 million tonnes. So if you can imagine, we're at 4 million tonnes at the moment in 2 deposits. I think we've got some upside, put it that way.
Now Raj has written in and he's asked, would the drilling completed at C3 have increased the resource, and when do you plan on releasing an updated MRE?
Yeah, look, I can't say that anything definitive about if it's increased or not. we've been really impressed with the widths so far compared to the historical drilling, as well as the grades. The zinc has surprised us a little bit on the upside, but we've been collecting a lot of information, including density, which helps to estimate tonnage. Yeah, we're confident that we'll be able to upgrade the resource in terms of its category. So definitively, it should be improved from only inferred to a large portion into indicated. But we're also pretty confident that the tonnage will improve as well when we do an MRE. In terms of when we'll do the MRE, the plan would be after the second round of drilling at C3. So at the moment, we're drilling C1. As soon as we get the EM equipment on site, we'll be doing a flem survey and downhole survey just to give us a much more confidence about the extensions. We'll get the rig back at that point. We'll do another 10 to 15 holes, and at that point we'll make a decision about the MRE. But essentially, yeah, look, it's probably Q3, late Q3, early Q4 is the timing for the MRE, I think, stage.
John's written in and said, "Nice work to date, Rob. What's the approx NSR on the recent big copper zinc assays?"
Hi, John. Yeah, the NSRs are really hot, and in fact, you can see on this diagram here, the drill holes are coloured by the NSR chart on the right-hand side. So it gives you a good idea that that orangey colour, which is between 200 and 400 on the NSR, is the number. Bearing in mind that these are the values that we've used for the JORC resource, so back in mid to 2021, and they use very conservative estimates of pricing for commodities, including copper and zinc specifically. And as we all know, the recent numbers have increased those significantly, and we've done some internal calculations just looking at how the influence of the NSRs have been by the recent price rises, and yeah, it's almost doubled the NSR values, but we're sticking with the conservative numbers for now, and we certainly will continue to do that. But you can tell from the map that it was a reasonably, it complied quite well with the historical work that was done.
How many meters are planned at C1, and what percentage of these are focused on expansion discovery as opposed to infill upgrade?
Yeah, I don't have. So I reckon about 4,000 metres we'll do in this round. I think we will be risking a bit more in terms of expansion and discovery. Probably I'd say 50% upgrade, sort of 20 to 30 or 20 to 40% expansion, and then maybe 5 to 10% on discovery. I don't have the slide ready in terms of C1, but you'll probably remember from earlier announcements that there's a big EM plate to the south, and we'll definitely try and put some holes into that to see if we can, make a long strike or an extension discovery at C1. So yeah, sort of 50, 35, 40, 5 to 10% in terms of discovery.
What is the timing to drill some of the regional targets such as C3 West, and what is the process in getting these drill ready? Said Charles.
The process of getting them ready from a logistical point of view is access to the land from the farmer, and a drill report ready through from the government. Neither of those have been problematic to date and have happened quicker than we've required them, so I'm not fussed about that kind of access issues. In terms of getting them ready for drilling, we want to do as much as we can before we drill these targets, and that includes phlegm, like fixed loop EM surveys across them. So as soon as the machines are in transit from Australia at the moment, I expect them within a couple of weeks, and as soon as they're on site, they've got some downhole work to do at C3 and fixed loop work to do at C3, but we're also wanting to get them on site at C1 as quick as we can. So it's we're going to have a bit of a juggling process for the geophysics, and as soon as we've got a little bit of spare time and space, we'll set them on C3 West. We'll put them on a new prospect that we've called Pelican's Eye, which is further to the west of C3. Julio, my exploration manager, he thinks that's the best one out there. So he's cheering for that one. But we're really going through quite a rigorous process of getting our prospects ready for drilling. And as soon as they're ready, we'll get into them.
Are you planning on doing metallurgical test work from C3 and C1? That's from Jeremy.
Yeah, hi Jeremy. Look, we are, and that's in motion. We've selected a consulting group out of Australia, and they've gone out to the labs. Labs are incredibly busy in Australia at the moment for network, but for this kind of network, it's really important that we choose a Australian lab or a Canadian lab because the Brazilians just don't have the same level of experience. So as soon as we have the final set of results through from C3, we'll be selecting our composite samples and sending them over. I think we're estimating about 150 kilograms in the first round of met sampling. So we expect that to be arriving in Australia in call it late May, early June, and then it'll take about 8 weeks to 10 weeks of met sampling. So that'll be coming through in Q3. Yeah.
Are you allowed to report the drill intercepts in copper equivalent? And what would be some of the better intercepts from the recent announcements be in copper equivalent? That's from Anna.
Anna, we can't, unfortunately, because the ASX have clamped down a little bit upon using equivalents unless you have metallurgical numbers to support your calculations, which is why we're sticking with NSRs for the moment. The NSRs are based upon a recovery factor as well that was included in the JORC resource, but we feel as if it's better to wait for the metallurgical results to come through to support a copper equivalent or a zinc equivalent number to come through. And we find it a little bit frustrating in terms of how it's reported, because if the price changes, the equivalent number doesn't change very much. So I think it's actually a better measure of the intercept. But once we've got the met samples reported, then we can estimate the recoveries, and then we can include them going forward. So expect that to happen soon, because some of the numbers we do them internally, obviously, to see what they look like. Some of the numbers are pretty spectacular.
Now I'm just conscious of the time, so this will be our final question, but what is the exploration progress in the company's southern nickel tenements? And that's from Pete.
Hi, Pete. As part of our regional announcement, we're putting together a bit of a summary on what's happening on our targets that are on the outskirts of the main areas, and we've kicked off exploration 2 weeks ago down at Canabrava, and basically it's the very early stage reconnaissance. We've been on site and done a few traverses across it. I'm pretty excited to report that we found some ultramafics and have taken a few samples. Nothing back from the labs yet, but it's starting, and pretty excited about how that's going to progress. I've got a dedicated team on it, a young geologist who's going to be spending a lot of time in the field, just out mapping and sampling and putting together some exploration. So yeah, stay tuned on that one, and there'll be some news out on it in the next few weeks.
Now, just finally, Rob, for everyone's benefit, what can shareholders expect over the next 6 months from Alvo?
What can we expect for the next 6 months? Drilling. We'll be continually drilling. We haven't stopped since we started, and we don't intend to at this stage. Hopefully results will start to flow through from some of our regional work, and of course getting the EM on site is going to make a big difference in terms of planning our drilling. We really see the EM as a game changer for exploration, and should allow us to save money and time on our drilling. Obviously that's the biggest expense that we've got, so hopefully it'll be much more targeted, and it should be quite a good 6 months full of news going forward. One thing that I forgot to mention is that we We are close to signing a deal on an RC rig to come and do a few thousand metres for us as well. That'll be both at C3 and C1. At C3, the focus will be on the supergene zone near surface, and then at C1, because C1's so much shallower than C3, we'll be using it to do some resource work as well. So I'm fingers crossed on getting an RC rig. It's not the easiest things to track down, and they're like hen's teeth over here, but if we do grab one, it'll be, it'll help accelerate some more news. So that's all good.
Yeah, that's very exciting, Rob. Well, unfortunately, that is all we have time for today. Thanks to all that have joined us. And also, Rob, thank you for the update. And we are looking forward to checking back in with you soon.
Yep, great. Thanks, Annabel. And thanks everyone for tuning in. And until the next time, yep.